J.K. Rowling was nearly homeless when she wrote the first Harry Potter book. Stephen King penned Carrie on a small desk wedged between a washer and dryer. James Patterson worked in advertising and famously crafted the Toys R Us theme song long before becoming an author. Join New York Times bestseller J.D. Barker and a panel of industry powerhouses as they pull back the curtain on some of the world's most prolific authors. Where did they start? What is their process? The biggest names in publishing all have origin stories. All have tips and secrets. What does it take to consistently top the bestseller lists and become a household name? Get your notepad out. School's in session. This is Writers Inc.
Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
JP Rindfleisch.
Kevin Tomlinson.
And this is JD Barker. Welcome to a special episode of Writers Inc. We've got Hugh Howey back. Yay.
Yeah.
For those of you tuning in, we literally just finished recording the previous episode 10 seconds ago. Now we're recording Hugh Howey. The plan was to make it sound as if it's a brand new episode, and we just got here. But yeah, we've got literally nothing to talk about because we just spent 30 minutes talking about stuff. But yeah, very excited to have Hugh Howey back. Here he is talking about his new series, Silo.
We do not know how long we have been underground, or who built the silo. We do not know why there is no life outside the silo. We only know that here is safe, and there is not.
So it has been a little over a year since you were last on Writers Inc., and we've got a release date, a new name, and a trailer that launched a few weeks ago. How has this experience since you've last been on? How has this been?
It's been a long way, man. It's hard to sit on everything for so long. Getting the trailer out there has been the biggest relief possible, because I've seen some of this stuff for a long time. I've been watching dailies for over a year. I've been on set. I've seen the cast, dressed up, and we haven't released anything. Like nothing leaked. We didn't get any paparazzi because we had a very closed set. We weren't out on city streets or anything. We're doing things inside the silo that we built, and so it's been painful. Not, everyone like, what can you share? What can you show us? And it wasn't until was it a week ago today? A week ago yesterday that we finally were able to show Rebecca dressed up as Juliet, and the trailer itself, man, it hits hard. Like my wife has watched it like 20 times. Every now and then I can hear the first like ding ding from Juliet turning the lights on, and I'm like, oh my God, you watched it again. And watching it on a TV is so different than seeing things on laptops. So you can go to Apple TV now and actually watch the trailer, and it's so cool.
Yeah, that trailer is wild. I love it so much. In terms of like where we are in production, I think we're 2 months away from release date. It's launching on May 5th. So what part of the process would you say this is in for someone who may not be aware as to like what this adaptation process looks like?
Everything's pretty much done now. I don't know how much finishing touch they're still playing with. We've had the cut, like what they call picture lock, where everything is edited and this is how the episode is going to look. There's still things to do like sound and music and special effects, but we've had the edited episodes for 6 months or so, and so we've been in post-production for a long time. But now it's a bunch of emails about when promo stuff is going to happen, when premiere dates are going to be, what cities people need to be in to talk to press and do things like that. The big announcement yesterday is there's a Cannes series. It's in Cannes, France. It's the TV version of the Cannes Film Festival. Silo is going to open up Cannes series this year, right after we do promo stuff in London. So that's super exciting. So Morton Tilden, who directed the first few episodes, Graham Yost, who ran the show, and Rebecca, who plays Juliet, are all going to be there for that. And hopefully my wife and I can get down to be there for opening night. That'd be pretty cool. But so stuff like that's all rolling out. It's just, it's happening a lot quickly after years of kind of waiting and not being able to say anything and things happening very slowly. Now it's just like every day there's stuff to deal with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think last time you were on Writers Inc. or the time before that, you'd mentioned coming onto the set for like the first time and really seeing that. But there's been plenty more production, because I think you were on just as the year was ending in 2021. And there was still probably a bit more to film. So how was being on set? Were you on set a few more times since then? And like, what did that look like when you were seeing this book come to life?
I think the set that we were on at the end of 2021, you seen the end of last year or the end of 2021? Because man, it's been a while. It feels like it's been a while since I've been on the Silo set. The last set I was on was the Beacon set. It doesn't get old. It's still crazy to walk on to these productions. And it's not just what they've built, but what it takes to build it, going through all the blueprints and seeing all the graphic designs. And in the case of Silo, it was like building a small office building. And so you needed the same level of planning and construction crews. And there's one room where it's just blueprints are pouring out constantly. And other rooms where they're just covered in paint chips and different fabrics, and it's so, and the time scale they're trying to do it on, it's like you're rushing to build something huge. So I'm blown away every time I get even near a set. And it's crazy to think when I watch a show, I have more of an appreciation for what went into that. Like just watched Severance recently, and seeing them walk through the corridors, I'm like, oh my God, I could just imagine what was involved in getting these shots. And it's actually I have to stop myself from saying it, but like from watching them set up so many shots now, I'll look at my wife, I'll watching something, I'll be like, I don't know how they got that shot. That's incredible. Like I'm appreciating the technical mastery of these cinematographers in a way that I never have before.
Has that impacted the way that you write?
No, I'm working on the third Sand book right now and another novel with a co-writer. And I still try to write like with my imagination. But when I'm reading back over some of the things that I'm writing now, having written some scripts and adapted some stuff, I'm like, well, this is definitely a scene you'd have to change because this is too expensive. I can see the money signs when I'm reading some scenes now, but I don't let that dissuade me, because most things just don't get adapted, and if they do, you've solved those problems in the writer's room. But I do giggle sometimes when I'm like, writing something just absolutely insane. I'm like, well, they'll never film this.
Right. And I guess, so what kind of challenges have you seen or during production that you maybe were made privy to, changes that were involved? I know in one of your blog posts, you shared a picture of Jules and Holston together, which doesn't occur in Wool, but it clearly is occurring in some form on Silo. So I'm curious, what kind of changes were you made privy to that you can talk about?
Well, that might be the only big one. But what I love about they put that shot out because it's two of their biggest stars on screen together. And if anyone else saw that shot, they'd be like, okay, there's two people talking. But anyone and a lot of my fans were like, hitting me up in my DMs and stuff, going like, wait, what is this? How what's going on here? Because if you look at the set list and who those actors are, you're like, that's Juliet and Holston. And I've read the books, and we know that must have happened at some point, but it doesn't happen in the books. So it's a neat little surprise for people who are fans of these two characters, who both of them play such an extraordinary role in this story. The first version of Wool, it was just Holston's story. Like he was everything. And Juliet was added as the book was serialized. So it had this really, and it's because I didn't really have anything planned. Like I didn't know that first story was going to go bonkers the way it did. So there's a very bolted together aspect to the plot in the cast of this book. And so I just love that image, because it's a big hint to readers who know this book well, that this TV show is going to have something a little extra to offer them. And I think they can assume, like, okay, this is going to be like, we know she lost somebody, we know there was a murder investigation, and if you're familiar with just those little aspects, that shot can really whet your appetite for what's coming.
Mm-hmm. And so you've mentioned Beacon 23, and I know that there are some other works that may or may not be in some form of adaptation. I'm curious, what can you talk to us about those? Where are those in stages of development, and how's that experience been?
Yeah, there's quite a few things, and Beacon 23 has been that will come out because we've got 2 seasons in the can, so that's all been filmed and is in post now. I've seen some episodes. It looks phenomenal. Really excited about that. Getting the same kind of pre-release stuff going, so we can show people what we've got. But that's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months behind, or maybe more. So we've got a while before we can start showing stuff. Everything else is just scripts and deals, but we're closing a deal with San right now, which will be the 3rd home that it's had over the years. Had some amazing scripts written for that, and one by my friend Gary Whitta, who's did Book of Eli and Rogue One. He wrote a phenomenal script, but at the time, FX, who had it, was like, if we filmed this, it could be the #1 show on TV, and we'd still lose money just because of the cost of production, which is something they were having with The Expanse at the time. So something that they learned from that show. So it's found new homes, and now we're landing it with another partner that we're really excited to work with. And every stage of this, there's like zero frustration for me. I'm just like excited that someone likes a book enough to want to adapt it, and to get another script written, and read that. The Plagiarist, a short story that I wrote right before Wool, that's got a couple of episodes written, and it's amazing. Don't know if it'll ever get made, but boy, it's incredible what the writers have done with that. And got a couple other things that are out there, and Deals Inc. Like, there's an original show I created for AMC with a friend, my writing partner Matt, and this world is bonkers. Like, I just want this. I would love for this show to get made, because we've come up with so much incredible stuff, and there's no book version for people to go, enjoy the world that we built or the characters. So we're like, we at least want to get in the writer's room and flesh some of this out. And we're getting a producer on. So it's already set up at a studio, but we're getting a producer on to try to help get it to where it needs to be, maybe after the writer's strike, which is coming up in a couple of months. So a lot of stuff in the works, but I'm amazed what this year has got on offer already. Like, it's going to be just an insane year. Awesome. For me, just of good fortune, really. Yeah.
And you had mentioned your screenwriting with Matt, which I know you were just starting, I think, when we last spoke. Have you been working on multiple screenplays, or are you just kind of focusing on that one AMC one?
Yeah, we've got so much. He and I have a document of ideas, and there's so many shows that we've not only come up with, but created pitches for. We've written a few pilots. We've got one pilot was like really created a frenzy. We had meetings with like 20 different people on it, and we just finished a feature script, which now we're going to adapt into a book, so that if we do get a deal, we can keep the IP and keep writing more books. We're very prolific together and have a lot of fun. So it just doesn't feel like work writing with Matt. And his books, his full name's Matt Michelados. His books are, but he's just one of the most talented writers I've ever come across. So, and then once we, got to know each other, he's just also one of the nicest guys I've ever met. So it's just a thrill to work with someone that talented and awesome.
Yeah. And with screenwriting and novel writing, are you still doing 50-50 for those, or how does that kind of look throughout the year?
And it's more concentrated on whatever project kind of either has a due date or has our attention, or that we're often thinking about like what our agents need to have in their hand to go do what they want to do with it. So if you hand your agent like 10 pilots, like that's too much. You can't go around town with that much different material. So you finish a pilot, you get that out, and then you can just work on a book or work on a feature, edit existing stuff. Just kind of bounce between not just what captures your attention, but what the market can bear.
Yeah. In a very long Twitter thread, you kind of go through what someone might expect in development and adaptation of their novel. And in there, I found it really fascinating because so many people talk about development hell, and you called it development heaven. And I know that this thread was written about a year ago. I'm curious, how has seeing this book come to this point, with it being so close to being released, how has that opinion strengthened or changed as you've gone to this process and nearing that finish line?
It's definitely strengthened. I read that thread went up like a week before Wool and Beacon 23 got greenlit. So at the time, I was writing about managing expectations because nothing really gets made. So just enjoy the whatever process you're in. And even the next week when this both got greenlit, I've had people tell me before that a project was greenlit and then didn't get made. So even when that happened, I was like, that's awesome. Like really excited for you guys, because it's there's no part of me that's thinking it's actually going to get made, but I'm super excited for that next step and for people to be still excited for the project, because a lot of times you get a deal and you just never, people move on to another project they're interested in, and you don't get updates. You're not hearing from people. The initial excitement that landed the deal just kind of fades as people don't know what to do with the project or how to take next steps. So I take, the heaven part is like, it's just awesome to have an entire other industry interested in your story and wanting to turn it into something. But not everyone is like that. I've got writer friends who are just like miserable as their things are getting made because they're making changes in their, and I've definitely, there's been parts of the process that are just like, annoying, or you just have to keep reminding yourself, oh my God, I'm living my dream. I can't believe someone is even interested in this. So to keep constantly, and that's part of what that thread is for even me. It's a reminder to myself, like, you never thought you'd be in this position, and appreciate that every single day, and appreciate each step like it's the apex.
And there, like you'd mentioned just now, and then there were points in the thread as well, where you kind of reach this point where people kind of expect you to push back, and you're just like, yeah, cool, I'm fine with it. Let's go that direction. Has there been a point in this where you've maybe had to stand your ground on an opinion with your work as it's getting adapted, or have you been very offhands, kind of just accepting it as it changes?
I definitely give notes, and some of them, I'm pretty, I feel like things could be better in places, and I'll, make sure that everyone on the team like has my idea for how to make the story better. It's very rarely like this is the book, don't change it. It's more, I feel like there's a better version of this. I'm usually the one who's pushing things away from the original story and saying, why don't we, could we make this better this time? There have been some changes that I feel like make the world less interesting, or the story weaker, or characters' motivations a little muddled. And so when a change like that happens, all I want to know from the director, the showrunner, the producers, the writers who are suggesting this changes, what their idea and motivation is. Like, how's this going to pay out? If we're going to deviate from what's already established, how does it make it better? And if they have a good reason for that, I'm all for it. Some changes are arbitrary, and it's just like, well, we just decided to do this. And those are the ones that I'm like, let's workshop that a bit. Let's figure out how to actually make the story better, because it's an opportunity. Like, when I publish a book, like it's just been one person daydreaming how what could happen here. And when you get 8 people together, like let's improve the story, and that's usually my motivation. I just want to tell the best version of every story possible.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like kind of like that acting yes and approach, whereas instead of being like a hard no, you're just like, okay, cool, but let's explore this idea a little more. And I've learned that a ton through co-writing, is like, the work is not your work as much as it's a piece of development that can only get better if you just continue to accept that there are other minds that are kind of interacting with it. So that's great. And I guess in terms of advice for writers earlier in the step and trying to figure out how to even get their books to this point where they may or may not be adapted, what advice would you give to those writers that are kind of looking to get a shoe in?
It's a good question. I mean, there's just so much that's not in our control. There's so much luck involved. If you would have told me when I was working in a bookstore and self-publishing novels and short stories and writing in very different genres and writing at lengths that publishers wouldn't even touch, these novelettes and things like that. And if you would have told me, just thinking of a couple of, like, one of my favorite writers is Neil Stephenson, and I've read, all of his stuff, and I think he's an absolute genius. I've been fortunate enough to get to know him, and he's like he's maybe the nicest guy in writing. And you would think that people would be lining up to adapt his works, and all of it's been, optioned. Like, I don't think any of his works are available because he's so successful. He's so talented. Diamond Age just like is begging to be adapted. I would love to see a Game of Thrones version of his the Quicksilver Baroque cycle. If you would have told me back then, working at that bookstore, that you're going to have 2 TV shows made before Neil gets a film or TV show made, I'd say you're absolutely crazy. Like, here's a guy who's won everything. And so how do you make sense of that? Like, I could tell a writer, okay, here's how you get adapted. Go have Neil Stephenson's career. That's not even a guarantee. And so those kinds of perspectives are a constant reminder to myself just how lucky and how difficult it is. Another learning, I'm now like around a lot of people who have had a big success in Hollywood. Like 2 Oscars just went to like 2 people for my wedding party. Like, I'm seeing friends, have success, and I'm around people who are getting things made all the time. All those people are struggling to get their next project off the ground. And so the idea that once you've had success, then, you can just make whatever show you want and do anything you want, even that's not true. So how do you tell someone who's like, let's say they're working on their first book and they're thinking, man, how do I get Hollywood interested in this? I can tell you that the biggest names, like, name anybody you can think of, they're all working on that same question.
Yep.
What does that mean for us as writers? It means, there's no shortcuts, even for people who are established. There's no sense to it, really. There's so much luck involved. And what I tell myself, and I guess this is my advice to other writers, is remind yourself of the things that you can control. So you can control like how you comport yourself with other creatives, with your fan base. Like the first thing you can do is make sure that you're someone that other people want to work with or want to see succeed. So make yourself, and this is life advice that everyone I think should follow. Be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. Don't just like write the best version of the story, like be the best version of yourself. That you can control. Relationships matter so much in every industry, but in publishing and in Hollywood. The other thing you can control is is your story engaging? You should be trying to get as many readers as humanly possible. So write stories that captivate people, that make them read to the very end, that keep the pages turning, that make people want to tell other people, about this story. And that's such obvious advice. It sounds like really too simple. But if you remind yourself of it when you're writing, you're like, what is this boring filler scene where it's just characters talking about, how do I make this something no one's ever seen before? And how do I make this compelling? And how do I improve my prose so that it's, reads clearly and crisply, but there's also kind of turns of phrase that, make people want to reread a sentence. That goes back to what are you reading? How are you improving your craft? So, it's a long answer and there's not much actionable there, except that it's super difficult. The things that you can do to improve your chances will also make you a better writer. So just work on those things. And I think that Twitter thread really says it all, that just manage your expectations. It seems like everybody's getting, The Last of Us, incredible video game, is getting made into some of the best TV out this year. And wow, that must have been so easy to do. Craig Mazin's story and Neil Druckmann's story get to the people behind this that finally got that to the finish line. They'll tell you a 10-year saga, a decade-long saga behind how they got to this point. And Silo is 12 years or so since we did the first deal with Ridley Scott, or going back to self-publishing that first story. So it's I think you would get dissuaded if you said, all right, sit down to write. In 12 years, let me tell you what's going to start to happen. I don't know how you even make any progress with that kind of a horizon. Instead, you just, if you just remember, I'm that guy in the bookstore who's got a day job and my passion is telling stories. Keep your head in that space and let the rest, work itself out.
Yeah. I mean, that's perfect advice, because so many people are focused more on what can I do in the future, but realistically, everything is very grounded in the now. It's not only the relationships that you kind of need to build now with other authors and your fan base, but just focusing on what is in front of you and making that the best version you possibly can. And I love that approach. It's very, very Zen, very focused. Well, thank you for coming on. I believe the first 2 episodes of Silo release May 5th. So if we don't chat before then, I would love to chat after those episodes release.
Yeah, for sure. I love that it's May the 5th. It's the day after Star Wars Day.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, man.
Thanks, JP.
So I want to know, what's been the hardest thing that you've had to wait on as an author?
Crickets.
Everything.
You've never had to wait on anything? Sharing news?
Well, think about it.
JD jumps right in.
I'm trying to give somebody else a shot. I mean, honestly, like everything about this profession it circles around rejection and letdowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool to have a book published, but like before that happens, you're getting agents telling you why it shouldn't be. You're getting publishers telling you why it shouldn't be. Then it finally gets out there and gets published, and then you've got film and TV people telling you why it shouldn't be on the screen. So there's constant letdowns. I mean, it's a big roller coaster, to be honest with you. And you touched on it, and we've talked about this before. Like you get optioned, then 2 years goes by and nothing happens. Everybody's excited at the beginning, but then they get pulled in 10 different directions. That option expires and either gets renewed or you go somewhere else, and the whole process starts all over again. It's just there's so many different people that have to come together, to make one of these. Dan Brown once told me that you just watch the credits at the end of a movie. Every single person that's listed there needed to be there in order for that thing to get to the screen. That's what this process is like. So when he options something like Wool, then they have to go out and find all those people. They have to write it. They have to film it. Everything has to line up. It has to fit budget. There's just so many millions of different things that take place.
It's that gap of waiting to find out whether it's real that is always the most nerve-wracking, though, because I've had things optioned in the past and they fell apart. Something, one reason or another, they decided to go a different direction, and I'm adjusted. Like I can tolerate the rejection and the thing falling apart. My hopes never rise until I see the check with my name on it. Right. But the sitting and waiting to find out whether or not it's really going to happen this time, that's the thing that is the most nail biting for me.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I think, but my film TV agent, he's in California and I'm on the East Coast. So when he calls me, when something happens, it's usually like late at night. So like when I see my caller ID light up with my film agent and it's 9:00 at night, I know it's either something really good or something really bad. He doesn't just call to shoot the shit. It's usually one or the other. And you get equal amounts of both of those, and that's, I think part of the problem with all this. But like Kevin just said, like it happens over and over again. You will get optioned multiple times. Most projects in my experience take about 10 years from start to finish before they actually get done. Like that's, for whatever reason, seems to be the magic number. Everybody you talk to, no, it was about 10 years. This happened, that happened, this happened, but it took about 10 years. Yeah. So that seems to be the norm. I was really good friends with Dallas Mayer. He wrote under the name Jack Ketchum. And he told me once that he actually made more money from the options and those types of things than he actually did from the films that actually got made. Because, options would expire. He'd go out and they would get another one and another one and another one. And those were steady checks coming in. And one of the things that you notice on the Hollywood side, and I've seen this with a couple of my projects already, like those options, like your book basically becomes a known commodity. It's like it gets optioned by somebody, and if that happens 2 or 3 times, the second that the option is available, somebody's out there and they pounce on it. And a lot of times they pounce just for the sake of just having the IP. And they may not plan on making it either, but they just want to make sure somebody else doesn't make it in case they want to. But like I'm kind of at that point with certain titles where they just that option is out there for like 10 minutes and then somebody scoops it up. So why not?
Have any of you had the experience of someone optioning or reserving it just to prevent it from being done?
I think that happened with Dracul, but Hollywood is fickle. It's very difficult to actually find out. But like when Dracul came out, when we were circling around New York and California talking about it, the dark universe was very big as a topic over at Universal. So Paramount jumped all over Dracul and bought that up quickly. And they put a lot of money out there to make sure nobody else could get it. And I think that was because of the dark universe. Like they had the Mummy, they had stuff, but they didn't have a Dracula title yet. And this would have given them a fresh one. And I think Paramount didn't want Universal to have it. But that's total speculation. There's no data whatsoever to back it up.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like when you're writing your novels, do you think about how your work would adapt to the screen when you're writing? Do you try to intentionally make it cinematic, or is that not something you think about?
I did with Caller's Game, but more because everything up till that point that I had done had gotten optioned, so like when I wrote Caller's Game, I'm like, I'm going to write a book that they can't possibly film just to see what happens. And if you read Caller's Game, like I blow up like half of New York in that book. And like, it's a $100 to $200 million movie if they were to actually film it the way that I've got it written. I was like, there's no way they're going to film this. But there's a production company behind it. It's optioned. Like like there's something happening there. It doesn't mean that they're going to do what I have in the book, which is the other thing that Hugh kind of touched on. Like once these people step in there, they could take your story in a completely different direction. A lot of parts can come out, new stuff can go in, and it may not be even remotely similar to what you started with, which is all fine. It's a different product at that point.
Yeah.
All of mine are written. Just about every book I've ever written was primarily written with a sort of TV angle, because that was kind of, I had a bit of a background in TV, but the stories that always resonated most with me tended to come from that arena. So I had a lot of things like we've talked about before. Now everybody says that prologues are dead, but I did the whole prologue thing as a kind of cold open, the way all those old detective shows and stuff would always do. So everything I crafted was sort of had that eye to it, not necessarily that I was hoping it would get picked up for TV, but that's sort of the way I organize story, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same for me. I'm still like a fledgling author, I guess you would say, but I've just always been able to kind of like picture the story flowing as if it's a movie or a TV. So I'm not like doing it intentionally so that it gets picked up, but I envision the story as if like, what do my set pieces look like, and kind of in that sense. And it's just kind of subconscious at this point.
Yeah. And
I don't know if it's right, but
no, I'm trying to intentionally say, what does this look like? Like, not just what are the words, but what does this look like? And I thought it was interesting when, Hugh was talking about the sound of it too, and not just like adding sounds like a door creaking or footsteps, but like, and if you have a movie, if someone is talking like a lion growling, like you hear that. So how do you translate that onto the words on the page so that you can hear voices better? So I thought he had an interesting way of describing that. So that was pretty cool. I know he also mentioned the WGA strike. I meant to look that up today, but I did not. I saw that might be happening. Does anyone know any more about that, or how that's going to affect Hollywood streaming? Or we're still in a kind of wait and see?
It's a big conversation. At least I've had it a couple times in the last few months. And the essential take is, okay, do we try to get out before the strike, or do we wait until after, with whatever the idea or project is? I've got two right now that they, basically rush to try and get in front of it. And I've got one other one that they're waiting, like particularly till after. These things happen too, like everybody, we've seen it before. The whole world just kind of comes grinding to a halt. And the problem is with taking something out now, knowing that it's a strike, I think is May 1st is when it's supposed to start. Even if you find a studio that wants your particular project, they may not bite right now because, they're thinking, well, strike like is coming up. we don't want to pick this up and not be able to get writers. So like it puts everybody into this holding pattern.
Yeah. And I loved how Hugh talked about working with other writers on the book too. And he just has so much humility for having so much work out there that's being made and being so accomplished. He just really appreciates having his book being made into a visual medium. And I loved how he talked about it as an opportunity to improve the story with other writers. So, I know JP and I both are big into collaboration. How do you think stories improve when you bring other people in and work on it to improve it?
Well, he's way better at it than I am, because I've gotten those notes, where we want to make this change, we want to make that change. And like, the last one that I saw, like it literally took the story in a totally different direction. And like my brain immediately starts to, look at, okay, well, if you do this, then that's going to basically domino and cause this, and this to happen. That could be good or bad, but like my general, process, and this is totally wrong, is I get very protective of the story at that point. Like, if they can't get it right, I don't want them to do it at all. I'm going to take my ball and go home kind of thing. That is the wrong way to approach this. The way Hugh is doing it is the right way. Look at it. If it doesn't work, get everybody in a room and say, okay, let's workshop this. Let's try and think, what are you trying to accomplish with this? Okay, for me, it didn't work when I read it, but let's see if we can tweak it a little bit and then get that to happen. That's by far the better way to do it. And I'm going to actually work on that myself.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. Just, the critical thinking. Why are you making this decision? Is it arbitrary? If yes, then no. If it's improving the story, then let's work on that. And I really love that attitude. Take Hugh's advice to try to be my best self.
Yeah.
One of my favorite adaptions was Lev Grossman's The Magicians. And it's because the series was so focused on a primary character, and the sci-fi series took that and made basically like 8 protagonists all coming from different angles. And the fun thing about that world was there were alternate universes. So it was almost as if the visual aspect of it, the sci-fi series, was an alternate universe to the book. And they coordinated together in a way that they became their own stories, and they rebounded on each other so that you could enjoy both pieces, and they had the same heart, but they were very different. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like if any story that I had were to be expanded on and changed in a different medium, I would be more receptive to seeing what those changes are based off of a professional in that medium, and see like what direction do they want to take it because of stories like that and how well they succeeded.
Yeah, a good way to probably research that. A few authors have done this. Stephanie Meyers, I think, went back through Twilight and rewrote it from Edward's standpoint instead of I forget the girl's name, but it completely changes the story. When you see it from that perspective. The woman who wrote 50 Shades, she did the same thing. She went back and rewrote it, from the male perspective. And again, totally different story when you do that. I think when you're in a writer's room, they tend to brainstorm that a little bit more. As an author, when you sit down, you're like, well, this is my lead character. This is the story is from their point of view, and you just kind of go with it. You don't really think about it. But I've gotten a third of the way through a book before, and just realized this POV isn't right. This isn't the one to tell the story, and I've gone back and changed it. So I don't think you should ever be afraid to do that. I think this is just a far more, because film and TV is so collaborative, it's just an expanded way to look at that.
Yeah, if it's done right, I think it's absolutely the most powerful way to go, because you're at that point you're being additive. You're creating in that universe rather than trying to tell the same story, and that means that the people get so disappointed, and I've been there too. There have been adaptations that I'm like Jumper, for example, and I remember talking with Stephen Gould, the author of that series, about that film when it came out, and he bent over backwards to not criticize it, but privately, he's like, he didn't like it, and he didn't like what they did with it, but he didn't have any control over that. And as a fan of the book first, and then eagerly anticipating the movie, I was very disappointed in the treatment of that universe. I didn't mind the changes made to the character in terms of the personality and the flow of the story and that sort of thing. That felt natural to me, but they changed like a fundamental thing about his ability, and that's what set me off. But if you do this right, I mean, there are definitely adaptations that feel more like we're going to step into this universe that was created by this book, and we're going to tell new stories in it. And I appreciate those. Those are the ones I'm actually in for. I want to see that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it was great having Hugh back on the show, and hope you guys enjoyed this bonus episode. And if you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode, and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.